Hey, Marcus here. Real quick one from me. Our goal with this podcast is simply to deliver practical, real world insight that you can apply in your life and business right away. And honestly, there's gold in every single episode. If you don't want to miss out on that, then hit the subscribe button now. Let's dive in to this episode with Hannah Hardy Jones from Contented. Episode 14 with Hannah Hardy Jones from Contented.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Looking forward to our conversation today. And to get us started, tell us a little bit about the business that you are in.
Wow, we are in the AI business, although we were just talking previously about we don't actually say AI in our name because so much of what we do is about people and it's not just about like the latest technology and AI models. So what we do at Contented is we take audio of meetings and all types of conversations. So whether it's a walk on the beach and talking about your, thoughts for the week and recording that, right through to formal board meetings and council meetings, and we transcribe it and then turn them into amazing insights and content and summaries, which are, really rich in kind of insights and detail that you can't get anywhere else currently. That's what we do.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the benefit of that for people who are familiar or aren't familiar with AI. Why would you want to do that?
Yeah. So traditionally in most meetings or formal meetings, you have a note taker often, or you're doing it yourself. Yeah, a scribe. So for board meetings, often you're hiring somebody actually to do that. Most meetings, someone's kind of trying to get down notes, trying to put that into something, whether it's an action table or whether it's some information for the rest of the team. So that whole process obviously is so manual. And so with technology, the fact that you can now record that and transcribe it, which means obviously turn that into words, which again is often done traditionally by somebody who has to sit there and listen and type it out, and then be able to disseminate that information quickly, get value from that conversation, and make some really impactful change within the business. So that's the huge benefit. I mean, we work with people from, every day, kind of like a farmer on the farm recording their chat with their team, right through to, really big strategy meetings. And the fact that, up until now, a lot of those words just go into thin air and they're not action, but they're not even reflected on. So that's where we come in.
Yeah, it's one thing in my professional experience, meeting with people, and then the thing I hate personally is like having a great conversation and then feeling like, oh, we always agree at the end of the meeting, I'll send an email to follow up and agree on what we discussed and blah blah blah, the usual stuff, and then having to go back and think about the conversation, or back to the office and go, what did we actually talk about, or sit down at the computer and start hamming away. It's really it feels really unproductive.
Yeah.
And so I totally see the use of that from that perspective. And also just wanted to touch on what you're doing in terms of the marketing side of the app, because I've been testing that out. And it's early days, but I've been recording coaching sessions and then uploading them to the app and seeing what insights it gleans. And it is quite cool, because sometimes what my perspective on the session and what was useful is different to what the app's actually drawing out, which is interesting too. So talk a little bit about that.
And I think on that note, that you're so biased when you're in a meeting. So like humans naturally, if someone's talking about their problems, you think of the solution. Like your brain is half thinking about, oh, how could I help? What could I offer here? Particularly when there's, it's a work situation. And so being able to you can still do that, but when it's recorded, that part that you've missed or you've thought about in a different way is there. And every single time I use Contented, I'm always amazed at what I've missed. Like always. Sometimes I even have to check with someone to say, did you actually say that? And they're like, yeah, I did. But it's just, it would never have kind of crossed my mind that that was important. And so within our platform, we've identified that there's obviously business insights that you need from conversations, like just a summary, an action table, a risk matrix, like very kind of sort of like standard outputs that you might even get a consultant to do potentially. Then you've got the things around the human. So, being able to draw out someone's struggles and needs and motivations, which is really powerful. And then the marketing side, which is taking words that we speak and turning that into content. And the problem with AI and tools like ChatGPT at the moment is they're so generic. They're drawing from the world's data. If you say, I want a blog article on trade tariffs and the impact on our economy, it's drawing from everything. If you have a conversation with someone or you record your own thoughts on that topic, plus you add in a couple of other documents that you've read that you find interesting, that recipe equals something so authentic that no one else in the world is going to have. And that's the huge difference between that voice input, because that's powerful.
Yeah, I'm going to bring that up. I was thinking about that whole content, the glut of content that we have at the moment because of tools like ChatGPT and other AI powered tools. So that's something we'll talk about later. I just wanted to go back into who is using the app, because you said that you've got everyone from farmers to board members using it. And I think maybe the assumption might be from a lot of people around AI that it's some nerdy tech stack dude with a backwards cap and a hoodie on somewhere in Silicon Valley that is using tools like this.
Yeah.
Who is your user base made up of mainly?
Yeah.
And who are some of the surprises?
Yeah, so the key user base that we have at the moment is wealth management, financial advisors, accountants. The reason for that is actually because I happen to have spoken at quite a few conferences to these groups of people, and word of mouth is huge, is really huge there. And a lot of them are in kind of membership type groups or associations. So we happen to work with some of the top financial advisory wealth management firms in the world. And they love the tool because they're not just wanting efficiency. They don't just want a meeting and then some points going into their CRM. They want to think really deeply about the strategy around who they're working with and their customers, and being able to glean some of those things to be able to provide huge amount of value. And that's what they've been getting. So that's our outbound strategy now, is because that fits really well. But inbound, we have just word of mouth is huge. And so it is anyone from, we work with quite a few recruitment agencies, we work with quite a few sort of construction type companies, we work with a lot of different sort of consultants and small businesses, and all of them are really kind of, you wouldn't say they're early adopters of technology. So they're people who truly care about their customers and the conversations they're having, and they resonate with our values too. And so I think, a lot of people think that it's the cutting edge people that are using these cutting edge tools, but actually we probably attract people who are traditionally very sort of behind in this space. So it's really cool to see them love the tool so much.
Who's somebody that's using the app in a really unsuspecting way or an unobvious way?
The first time we started hearing people using it for their own personal conversations was interesting. So I used it for, someone saying I used it for a doctor's visit, recorded that, and then I shared that with my family about the diagnosis. And then they started using it for all of those sort of health type meetings and conversations, which was really surprising. We're often surprised. We've got a doctor's practice, a dentist's practice that use it for all their internal meetings. So anything that happens with, say, the union or maybe suppliers or team meetings. So they're not using it with their patients because there's not really a massive need for that. But those sorts of things coming through are always quite surprising about who's using it. We have currently talking to a journalism company who work in Congress and Capitol Hill, who reached out to say, like, we want to start using this. We're really impressed. So like things like that pop up that you go, that's so outside of our like general customer base, but obviously we embrace them when they come through.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think it's good to hear those examples sometimes of outside the box ways to use software, especially because we tend to be pretty linear in the way we think about stuff. But yeah, that's cool. And where's your user base mainly from? Because you obviously mentioned the States and
Yeah.
you've got clients here as well.
Yeah.
Where's the...
So, I mean, Canterbury is our big hub. You know, one of our first customers was Business Canterbury. And so that really was a catalyst for then connecting with the business community. So primarily New Zealand. And then we have Australia, UK, and the US with just not huge customer levels, but just enough that it's really great experimentation for us in terms of what that looks like.
Cool.
Yeah, which is cool.
And going right back to the start, how did you get in this business in the first instance?
Yeah. So I do not come from a tech background. So I studied psychology and did HR for most of my career. And I started my first business, which was a startup called the Kite Program, which was really based on my own experience after having a baby and from a, lack of support and mental health perspective. And so that was a micro learning app for new parents, which then broadened into business. It broadened into eating disorders and supporting lawyers. And so it grew really rapidly. Such a hard market in terms of just mental health and budget. And a lot of our clients were doing it using Kite as a tick box. So they were quite happy that they had posters all around the business saying, we have an app. And it just, it became really hard. But I met my co-founder, Lucy, while I was doing that. We were in the Ministry of Awesome incubator, and she had her own startup. And we worked really closely together, just supporting each other as solo founders. And we came together, really, it was pretty much when ChatGPT launched, and Lucy was all over it. Like, she always stayed so up to date with everything that was happening, and she was like, you've got to try this. And because we used it in every part of our businesses, like as startups, we were like, how can we leverage this? And this was November 22, like no one knew about it really. And we saw such amazing gains from using these tools that we started realizing actually we could actually help other people use AI. And that's how we got into this. So it started out as a advisory consultancy. Then we started doing bespoke work for different people, and then the SaaS product came from there. But it was not the plan. Like, we didn't go into Contented going, we're going to build a product. It was it was definitely about learning and helping people at the start. So that was our journey. Yeah.
So initially, through that bespoke offering, was that focused specifically around how to leverage AI?
It was
people in their businesses.
Yeah, I mean, what we used to do was we'd go into businesses and go, right, let's talk about all your pain points from every part of the business, and then put them in buckets. And most of them aren't in the tech AI bucket; they're actually in the culture or process, and so we would help businesses with that. And the bespoke work that we did, and it really helps that Lucy is an amazing developer, self-taught coder. We would kind of go in and go, okay, Marcus, you've got this problem and you're struggling with these documents and turning them into tables or whatever it was. And we just build a tool just to solve a problem. So we used to call them pain point zappers. So people wouldn't have this whole huge platform. They would just have something, a mortgage broker turning, client data into a bank report, like really sort of quite simple. And it wasn't until we were working with Business Canterbury and they had a bespoke platform, and they were using voice in it. And there was an example of Leanne, the CEO, being away sick, and then being able to record a phone call between her and one of her team about a new policy. And they had, a 20-minute conversation, being able to turn that conversation into an incredible press release and other information for members. That moment of that impact was, for us, like, voice is the way to go. Like, there's not a better way to use AI currently. Like, it is the most authentic input, but it's not really done a lot. But we just saw the space, and so that's when we made the decision that we were not going to be doing, these other pain point zappers. We were just going to go all in on how can we capture these conversations and turn them into meaningful things and, you know, like that press release. So that was a really cool moment to get to.
Yeah, right. And what was that moment? Was that a singular light bulb aha moment, or was that something that kind of grew over time?
Yeah, it grew. I mean, anytime we were using some sort of voice within the tools, like it just fit more. And also what we realized was it was the thing that was less threatening to people. So because it's your words, when you see a result from it, you're not like, well, that's going to replace me, because you can't get that output without being that human saying those words. Whereas a lot of the other tools, you know, are moving towards really cutting out huge sections of what people do. And it just doesn't feel great a lot of the time. And it's low quality. And so it really, yeah, it was over time that we saw that. And then it was just exciting to kind of just go all in on that, you know. So we kind of, instead of going all in on a vertical or a customer group, it was like voice was our vertical. Like we are actually identifying that that's the power. Yeah. And that's how we started.
Yeah, I'm curious about the voice thing specifically. What appealed? Because you could have gone all in on anything. Was it just because it was? Was there something significant about voice specifically to that made it feel like this is the direction for you, or was it just a black and white product market fit kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was the product market fit, but it was also just when you test every other way to use AI. Like it was just like a transcript is just so amazing. Like it's like you can't, when you're comparing trying to prompt something to create something else out of even just a document or some text, that you just, it's just worlds apart. And so being able to do that well, probably there was a big part of us too where the challenge, like our competitors, you know, the people that do voice well are, you know, Fireflies and Microsoft and Zoom, and, you know, being able to kind of look at that and go, we could take that on. And if we can do this, we can really do it so well, was probably part of that as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the other tools in the marketplace. Obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious, but Fireflies is one that I see used a lot.
Yeah.
Microsoft, I used Otter before.
Yeah.
How do you see yourselves in that broader landscape of voice AI tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably see ourselves as like sort of the elite version of those. So if you are somebody who has a lot of meetings, you don't need like a lot of depth to them. You know, like if you're a sales rep and you're on 8 meetings a day online, those tools are great. Like you just need quick few action points, you know, get that into your CRM. The difference for us is transcription quality. So we're currently just the best that you can find, you know, in terms of the transcription. And that's particularly for Kiwi accents and for te reo and for noise and all those things that are more around the in-person. So a lot of the other tools focus on online meetings, but most of us, you know, and if you think of Canterbury businesses in particular, they're not sitting on Teams or Zoom all day. They're out at the cafe, they're out on the construction site, you know, like they're real sort of like human conversations. And so being able to capture those effectively, and that's where we really thrive in that, like a busy pub and having your phone recording and then putting that into contented, like that's such a good fit for us. So that's how we're so different, because you can't use those other tools like that.
The accent thing is one point that drives me ballistic with everything from Apple Notes to Audible. It's so frustrating. And I actually tested it the other day speaking in an American accent, and it picks up everything exactly right. And then the moment, I don't know if it's because I got a deep voice or because I speak in a monotone, but for some reason it just hates my New Zealand accent, and it is frustrating.
Yeah. No, we don't have that problem, which is awesome. I think
that is awesome. What, out of curiosity, and I don't know if this is a secret information, but what is the engine behind your app?
So we use multiple models. So if you imagine what like ChatGPT is powered by OpenAI, Claude's powered by Anthropic. So we use multiple models and we purposely built it so that if we needed to change, we could. So it's just we are completely agnostic in terms of what we use. And there's situations where it makes sense to use different models for different kind of outputs. But the AI on its own is pretty average. Like if you just use a baseline AI model, you're just going to get the sort of generic things. And so our biggest focus is on the best templates and the best, like best practice. So if you imagine like creating a SWOT analysis, if you want ChatGPT to do that, it's going to be okay. But when you layer it with like the best of the best and then instructions of how you create it to be the best,
Gotcha.
So it's like that base level, and then you've just got epic, technically it's prompting, but with multiple things. And then people don't have to prompt themselves. Like they know that you press the SWOT analysis button and it's going to be amazing every time because it's built on,
You've done the heavy lifting to make sure that those models that it's referencing and the prompts are what they should be.
Yeah. And they're long. I mean, these are like huge, and I think like
imagine.
we can spend a long time doing that because, that's the business that we're in. But for our customers, what they find so frustrating is they'll be on ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, and every time you're trying to figure out how to get what you want, and it just seems such a waste of time. And that's why people don't adopt it quickly, because you kind of get a few sort of average answers and you're like, oh, I can't be bothered with this. Like I don't want to give instructions to a human, let alone an AI model. So yeah, there's a big part to that too.
Yeah, I find for the times where I'm using it, we just used it the other day to build. We have a job ad template that we use and teach people to use when they're hiring, and that's a bit different, and it reads more like a day in the life of rather than a job description, which most job ads typically read like. And so I just thought, oh, there must be a way to kind of templatize this using ChatGPT, and it built a template, and it was pretty good. And so I got it to the point like it spat out some code, and I put it on the website. And now you can effectively go to this page on the website and answer the questions, then it spits out an ad. I mean, the ad's pretty crap, but then you put it into ChatGPT and refine it, and what it puts out is like 9 out of 10 versus how long it would take for me to sit down with them and write it, properly. It's most of the way there, but I find it's quite hard to get it to use a ChatGPT or similar to get it to get it to 10 out of 10 is like a disproportionate amount of effort.
Yeah. That you just should have just written it.
I just should have, there's just no point. And then going backwards and forth and like you said, trying to work out what prompts to give it to get that little last bit is it's really helpful if somebody's already done that and worked out what the prompts are, which it sounds like is what you've done. But also, I think that's, again, another bit that we tend to just assume that if it's got me 9/10 of the way there, it should be able to get me that last 10th. And often it just won't, it just never will.
Yeah.
And I noticed that with the uploading a coaching session to Contented, the essence of it was awesome. And then the extra little bit of polish will be what makes it actually appealing to people.
Yeah.
And from a content perspective.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that earlier in terms of you've dropped the AI, but equally I've seen you talk about it's not kind of AI is not replacing people.
Yeah.
It's people plus AI equals a better result.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, we really always talk to people around like the skills you actually need in business are not AI skills. Like you still need to be an amazing leader. You still need to be an amazing communicator. And I think a lot about what Contented is about is like making conversations better, having more conversations, thinking, asking different questions, all those really amazing human things. Um, and I think that that's so much around like, yeah, it's just a tool that helps synthesize those things, but all our focus should still be on people and their skills. And it's totally lost at the moment because everybody is just obsessed with being like, everyone needs to be skilled in AI. And, it's like back in the, like with Google, imagine being like, everyone in this workplace needs to be really skilled at using Google. And if you can't use Google, then you might lose your job. Like it's ridiculous, And so I think that's that. And probably when we talk about like dropping AI from our name is that it's much more about just the people and the feeling of feeling contented, which is what we want people to feel like, rather than kind of going, we have AI in it.
Yes.
It's like you don't say Netflix AI just because actually Netflix does have AI that helps suggest new, shows for you, but they don't like Netflix AI because it's So I think there's a bit of a
Yeah, I agree. I think the it's sort of at a bit of a fever pitch, or maybe we're actually forward from that now. I think perhaps 12 or so, 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And every time there's a new update, ChatGPT has just released their image generator, and everyone's losing their minds. And
it's all that LinkedIn is.
It's all that LinkedIn is at the moment, is people posting pictures of ChatGPT generated receipts.
Yeah.
And yes, we can potentially fraud the IRD, defraud the IRD. But yeah, I just want to pick up on that because the skill, but I'm curious in terms of, you've obviously come from an HR, a very human-centered background, and then Lucy's got this self-taught skill set around coding.
Yeah.
And you've got this name of Contented. It's quite an interesting amalgamation of things. And I'm wondering, how is that a point of difference for you guys, that you've got this very human-centered DNA in the company?
Yeah, it's massively important. I mean, like our sort of vision is to be the most human-centered technology, company in the world, which is probably not actually that hard to achieve when you look at what other tech companies are doing and the direction they're going in. And we talk about like Zoom, the CEO saying, their goal is to have avatars that can turn up to your meeting for you and answer all your questions. Like it's so far from what we are doing,
Why is that your mission? Why bother with that?
We just feel that it's our chance to just bring that humanness into not only our own culture and who we hire, but just to project that out, that that it's like it's technology for good, really. It's like if you're actually doing it for the good of humanity and actually taking into account what people need and want, and and growing with them, it's just it's really important to us. And we've said that from the first few days of even starting Contented. Like that was a massive value of ours.
Why is that so important?
I mean, for me personally, it's the having had a mental health tech company and like being just so for purpose and wanting to make a difference in the world. Like that was everything. Now I'm doing Contented. I can say that I'm doing more than I was before, like having more of an impact on people and their mental health by doing this. And so that it all rolls into that. And I think Lucy's the same in terms of her previous startup was in, ethical fashion and being able to see sort of supply chains and living wage of, of where your clothes were coming from. Like it's the same thing around the world, like making a big impact on the world. That's not just about making money. And that's, really important to us.
Yep. I mean, I agree. I agree with you. It's just interesting because you can have two companies that are actually centered on very different things.
Yeah.
And totally agree that the business always needs to make money, because otherwise it ceases to exist.
Yeah.
So we can never lose sight of that. But it is interesting when somebody like yourself bakes that into your DNA and orientates your whole vision and mission as a company around people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think also like our team is then really inspired by that, you know. So our lead developer, she's absolutely incredible. She was a nurse that came from China, wanted to start a new life in New Zealand. She did fruit picking for a year, you know, on her visa. Then she worked at a retirement home as a nurse because that's how you kind of get into that. And she decided to study, you know, to become a developer. And like her whole attitude to people, you know, and I remember her saying to me one of her favorite things about working in the retirement homes was she used to always move her patients, you know, residents into the sun. Like it was her thing. She'd go into their room and she'd just move them so they had the sun on their face because she was like, that was really important to them and I wanted to do that. And those sorts of things are just really important to us, that she loves people and she is excited when we make a difference to our customers and they tell us something that's happened in their business because of Contented and it's changed their life. She's equally just so, it means so much to her. And so I think we can grow our company based on people like her and just keep getting more and more of them that are just so excited about humans, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And like attracts like. So if you are clear on what it is that you're about, then you'll attract people who believe the same things.
Yeah.
And then create a competitive advantage for yourself in the marketplace, which is not necessarily the intention, but it's interesting that when you start with being really clear about who you are, the outcome is.
Yeah. And I think like our customers for particularly in New Zealand, like being a homegrown tech company, you know, I think like a lot of our customers, that's really means a lot to them too. You know, supporting female founders, it also comes into it. You know, there's some things around it that are not just, us being an AI company.
Sure.
Yeah.
Going back to the skills that you've brought to this business, I want to double click on those. You said you had a background in HR previous. What's and I think every time I ask anything around skills, I think there's a little bit of the that imposter syndrome that comes in our heads where we're like, oh, I'm not all the way there yet. But recognizing that and that you are in progress, but equally you've learned some things that have got you to where you are now. What are some of the skills that you feel have made the biggest difference to you and your business so far?
So I always think back at my HR time. Like I honestly think the only thing that made me successful in that career was just I could talk to people. Like I'd start sitting down at my desk and writing something and I'd be like, I'm just going to get up at my desk. I'm going to visit all my, you know, like stakeholders. I'm going to go see the director of midwifery and I'm just going to go in there and connect, you know, and that was literally my whole career. And I don't know whether I was actually that good at anything else. But I think for me, like with Kite, and the reason Lucy and I work really well together is because I had a product and I didn't really do a lot of user research. I just went, go to market, get it in people's hands, get them paying, work it out, you know, and so that's my skill is like getting it to market. Lucy's skill is always she's just considered, she does amazing user research and understands customers so deeply that the product is just epic, which is obviously the position we're in now. And so that's kind of that perfect mix. So I go and speak at conferences, I go to, you know, events and meet people. And I always talk about collecting people like they're all like these little pebbles, you know, and I'm like a kid that's like, look at all my little pebbles I've collected, you know. I just love that part. And I don't know whether there's like other skills necessarily that I bring into it than that, which maybe is fine. Maybe that's all I need to bring to the company. But
yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's many more skills, but equally, if you are world class at just those two things, connecting with people and making things happen, to me, that's like the core of every entrepreneur is those two things. Having, because ultimately we're solving people's problems. When you start a business, you're solving a problem for somebody.
Yeah.
And hopefully not creating too many others in the process. But and then in terms of that skill of failing fast, if you will, and just making stuff happen, like that's in the I see that baked into the DNA of most successful business people is that
Yeah.
ability.
And it's probably also, I mean, I do random experiments. So last year I want to have 70 coffee dates in 6 weeks. And I did this and I did it and it was, I think it was 7 weeks, but like things that are just a bit, maybe and I remember when I said to Lucy, I want to do this. And she's like, okay, I back you, but what's that going
Seems
to
like
do?
yeah,
If you meet 70 people in 6 weeks, oh my gosh, our business, like the amount of connections we now have and the people that use Contented is not necessarily each one of those people, they weren't necessarily customers, but they're like advocates and they're, even things like supporting me on LinkedIn, like they're all people that like you have in your sort of yeah,
in
amazing
your kitty.
people. Yeah, exactly. And I think that side, I love doing that. Like that was just the best thing for 6 weeks. Also got a lot of talking, but
Yeah, it's interesting, eh? How for our business we don't get a lot of inbound leads. The majority of it is us going out to the market and having conversations, like you said. But I think there's a real fear around sales, and the fear is because it feels so easy, and like I'm going to try and peddle my wares. But like you said, if I'm just having conversations with people and bringing people into my world, and whether they stay in it or not
yeah,
is cool.
yeah,
And like you, to go back to your point around just connecting with people, like getting up from your desk and walking around the office is not too dissimilar to getting up out off your desk, out of your office and walking around your city
yeah.
and connecting with people.
Exactly. And I think people often all think like, no, well, who's going to want to do that? But I've actually talked to quite a few people around like, how do you take my experiment and make it relevant to their business? And so it might be like, I want to talk to 30 people who have, immigrated to New Zealand from the UK and I want to understand their story.
Mm,
Like and then you find people like that. And just by doing that, you're not selling to start with, you're just making a connection in something. And then from there, the sales are easy. And obviously, then, I feel like this is like a contented plug, but being able to like actually record that, those are really useful too. So for me, for Lucy, I recorded every one of those 70. And in that coffee, I talked to them about their meetings and how, what their pain points were. I had 70 incredible pieces of insight for her that then allowed us to build an even better product. So like it's like nothing's wasted. Like whatever conversation you're having with someone, it's going to impact something in your business. Even if they don't buy from you, they might tell someone at a dinner party about you, or they might just give you some insight about your business.
mm,
So it's meaningful.
yeah.
There's actually a return on that investment of time.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is a great point. Yeah, I love that, and I think even for our business, we've done that before, and yeah, one of our clients came from that exact conversation of he's somebody I know, and I just had a coffee with him and said like you should be one of our clients, but you're not. And I wasn't actually it wasn't a push. Didn't go there to sell him, but it was I actually just wanted to understand why he was exactly in our target market, but was not a client. And I just had a conversation with him about why he wasn't. He was really honest, and it was
Yeah.
really helpful from my perspective. But
Yeah.
he ended up turning into a client
Yeah.
because at the end of it, he was like, "Oh, actually, what you're saying is exactly what I need," and I just hadn't quite realized it yet. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Totally.
it is interesting how we I think can just overcomplicate the the essence of what we actually do, which is what we all do when we run a business, which is solving problems and making
Okay.
connections
And I think also
with
it's
people
the not
else.
listening. So I think like often in sales, you
Yes.
go in and you're like, hi, nice to meet you. I've got these products, blah, blah, blah. Actually, you need to not say that at all until, so, what's the biggest thing going on for you at the moment? Or like, how's this impacting you at the moment? And as soon as you get people to open up something deeper, then you've kind of got that a way better connection.
Yeah.
You know, like if you can, the skills to learn are like, how do you get people to open up quickly? How do you get people to trust you enough to share something vulnerable? As soon as you can do that, you're miles ahead of anyone else that's going out selling.
Very true. Is that something that you have developed intentionally, or is that something that you feel has just come naturally to you?
I think probably potentially I've always been like that, like even as a teenager, like just I used to always have the thing like people would just tell me things. Like they'd just blurt out some like deep dark secret to me. And I think it was just because I would just give them the space to do it, or I'd say something. And like one of the things I always try and do is be vulnerable first. So like if it's something like, you know, you come to a meeting, like it's like, oh my God, I just, you know, nearly crashed my car and whatever. Like just something where people go, oh, you're not just trying to be this polished human. Like people don't respond well to that, you know? And so I think, I think I've always been like that. And then probably then having started my own business, particularly with Kite, I saw that power maybe more because it was just, you know, you have to get in front of people quickly. You've got to, you know, I had huge competitors and things, you know, like how do you have that point of difference? And it was always like, how can I get people to open up to me? And then if someone's shared something with you that's quite vulnerable, they just feel connected to you. They're kind of like, well, we're sort of now, I mean, it's
we're operating on that level.
Yeah. You care enough.
And I wonder if that was cultivated somewhat by just sharing your own mental health struggles and then being in an environment where you have had those conversations with business leaders and staff within those companies.
Yeah.
On that level, like that's not how are you going?
Yeah.
How's your week been? That's a different level of connection and vulnerability.
Yeah. And maybe it's I mean, I don't know, even probably on social media like LinkedIn and things, I always try and have people see the real me. So like I feel like when people meet me, they're like, oh, you're just the same as your posts, because it's like it is the real me, and that's really, really important. And I think that that's getting so lost at the moment. Because you can write a post using ChatGPT, but also just people want to put on the, you know, everything's amazing, we're nailing life. Like Lucy and I feel like that often in startup world, like all you see is just all the startups raising and all that, you know, everything's amazing, but you're like, it's just not the reality.
No.
And I think our customers in particular really respect that they feel probably like we're almost friends, you know, like we back their business, we want to see them achieve, they want to see us achieve, you know. That's a really cool thing to happen. That's authentic.
Yeah. I'm just, as you're talking, I'm thinking about some posts I've seen recently where people have, I don't want to call it fake vulnerability, but it's clearly like, hey, I'm showing like a deeper side of me, but you know, it's just for clicks.
Yeah.
It feels a bit like, yeah, you kind of went there, but you didn't really.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about how you do that, like show the real you.
Yeah.
Without it being, I'm showing the real me just to get a few more likes.
I think like a brand, particularly on LinkedIn, takes months. Like people think that they can just go in and be like, I'm just going to start posting this and people are going to buy my product, you know. Like you've got to think of it as like you really have to let people see you kind of almost slowly. And there's also that mix of, like for me, I'm always like, okay, so maybe like once a week I'll talk about contented. It's like talking about your baby. And, you know, it's not actually the best thing to do for your own personal brand. Like people don't really want to see you going, here's a screenshot of our product, but I'll do it because I'm just like, I'm just proud. Just want to share it. But just being able to just kind of go like, if you were seeing a friend like 3 times in a week, like what would you be talking about? Like would you spend the whole time talking about just all your problems? Would you like, no, you have a good mix where some days are good, some days are bad, some days you share something interesting, sometimes you a bit more controversial, but people are never surprised for like with me of what I post. Like I don't think there's anything I can post that people go, whoa, that's a shock.
Too much.
They'd just be like, oh, but it's because that's been cultivated over time. Whereas the example you're sharing is somebody that's suddenly gone, I might just write, I was bullied for 25 years, and that's the opening click, or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, it's something that one of my good friends actually challenged me on this a while back. She was like, your content is way too polished. You look like untouchable. And I know that's not true of you, but that's just how it looks from the outside.
Yeah.
And she really got stuck in a good way. Kate Muldoon, if she's watching, she knows who she is. And she's amazing at sharing like all of herself and her story and all facets of life. And so we've definitely tried to do more of that and have work to do. And in the same breath, I feel like there's certain people, like we work with a couple of lawyers, coach a couple of lawyers, and they are so cagey about showing any wrinkles in the suit or shirt. And because it's just so not the done thing.
Yeah.
So how do you personally find that, like we were talking off camera about how you have rules around talking about your kids and things like that, like where do you draw the line at, like, this is enough and I'm not going here, but I'm going beneath the how are you?
I think like from a mental health perspective, I remember when after I was diagnosed, etc., everything I saw on anyone who had a mental health condition, what they would do is write it in a way of like, I was at rock bottom and I was contemplating suicide, like really, really heavy. And I never wanted to be that. So that's definitely a line of like, whenever I've ever written about my journey, it's been like I always said, having a cup of tea with me at my kitchen bench, like not deep, dark, horrific, trying to shock people, because nobody wants to read that. And you have to think about your reader. Like it's not about you. It's like if someone's scrolling past and reading that post, are they going to be feeling good or not? And if they read that and they go, God, I feel awful and sad because Hannah's just written about this tragedy, that's not good. Like you don't want that. That's too far. So I think there's definitely that side of it where you have to not think about, firstly, don't think about clicks and how what's going viral, like disaster. Just going like, if I could sit in a room with 5 people right now, what would come to mind if I was just going to share something with them? Like, and that's probably your post that day. Like maybe it's you saw someone, walking on the street that, I don't know, was listening to music and looked really happy. I don't like whatever it is. You just think of something that's like, what's relatable? Who's reading it? Why do they want to read this about me? Do I look like a dick if I start sharing? I don't know. Like, so for lawyers, like I totally see that in that when you're employed by someone, you potentially can bring your business, your employer into disrepute. Like that's something definitely that's hard. So for me, it's fine because I own my business and really, like what's the worst that's going to happen to me? So there's that too. Like I'm not saying that everyone should start sharing their deep dark secrets, but even like, I mean, the other day one of my posts that kind of just had so much interaction was me talking about like how to get up early in the morning, and like everyone says you should get up at 5 and how do you do that, and people love that kind of post because they can share their story, like they can share their tips and things. So if you can create an environment where people will comment because they want to share their own thoughts, that's awesome. Yeah,
that's great advice. And I love the example of like imagining you were catching up with a friend 3 days in the week. It would not be, or at least with myself and my friends, it would not be all negative. There might be a couple of whinges in there, but it wouldn't be.
And it wouldn't all be about work. If you talked about work at each of those 3 occasions, they'd be like, boring.
Yeah, shut up.
Talking about work. And
probably would be the opposite for me, to be honest. It would be we're not talking about work at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are some of the skills that you found like really challenging in the business journey so far?
I mean, technical skills, like because we're such a tiny team and nothing's done offshore. Like I got an offshore company to build Kite. So I had this whole, I didn't really have to be that involved in it. And so with Contented, that's been definitely a challenge in terms of, particularly at the start with AI, when people would ask questions, like I'd be presenting and someone would be like, tell me about privacy, tell me about, what models are you using? And I would be like, I really don't love this part. So I've really had to work hard to understand, to a level. Like definitely there's not a deep level there. But that's been something. And then the other skill has been around taking a sales hat off and really thinking about customer, which is what Lucy's definitely taught me, which is like the power of a user interview where you are only asking them questions about themselves. And at no point are you talking about what we sell. Like, and that's been an amazing, part of that because I feel so much more comfortable to start a sales meeting with just so many questions about them. And I'm excited to know. Like, I want to hear the same thing over and again because that's actually means we've got that fit. And
You're
so
getting there. Yeah.
I've definitely grown that side. Yeah.
Yeah, that is, I have this colleague who has this great saying that you should always drink your coffee cold and they should enjoy theirs. Sorry, they should enjoy their coffee cold. You should be drinking it whilst it's hot.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
if you're having a coffee meeting, they're doing all the talking and you're just drinking your coffee
Yeah.
whilst it's hot.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, what we get wrong in sales 99 times out of 100 is just not actually listening.
Yeah.
Jabber, jabber, jabber.
And maybe you're thinking about the next meeting, and maybe you've just had an email to say that something's just been signed or someone's, rejected your proposal. Like all those things that go in. And it's so natural. Like, when you sit down with someone, they're like, how's your day? Or, something about your kids. And then when someone just automatically, everything is then their experience of it. Like, well, I've got kids, or I've had a bad time, or my house got flooded once, or like it just goes on and on. Like, that's really hard. So, not being that person, you're like, you don't have to come back with a story that matches
That
their
connects.
story.
Yeah.
Like, you can just go, cool, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's interesting. I wanted to touch on your mindset because you said right back at the start, you're around the vision. Like the vision is to be the most human-centered AI, tech company, was it?
Yeah.
AI tech company in the world. How does that affect the way you show up every day? Like I'm just curious about when you're like walking into work every day, what is the frame that goes around your.
I honestly, every morning, especially when I'm getting out of the car, is I just see all our customers. Like I literally just picture like this map of all our customers and kind of like what they're doing. And what drives me and keeps me in that zone is knowing the difference that we make to them. Like the point of being like, if we took Contented away from them, or Contented was down for an hour, which it's happened, and everyone's freaked out about it. Like that's great. Like you're that it's impacting their day so much, and that's the driver. Is it's like, what does that look like times a million? That's a really amazing world. Like, and it's like if we can help people have better conversations, and we talk about like we would love Contented used, in the UN, for example. If these conversations can be captured and more things be done with them quicker, that's just huge. So that's progress for, maybe counteract some of the things that are happening now currently. So that's the driver. And that's just, and I think like a lot of the time people say, God, isn't the world just, going to crap and everyone's feeling so sad about it. But I honestly think that Lucy and I just feel so positive about it because we know that it can change. Like we're seeing it at this smaller scale. So we feel like if we just carry on with that, we don't need to be worrying about how awful everything is.
Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't have capacity to be thinking about that because we've got this mission, and that's that kind of why we both wake up. Like, as honestly, that sounds so cheesy, but we both wake up just stoked. And the first thing we do often is send a voice note to each other, and whoever it is that's starting it is always like, "Morning," like just so happy. It's like just stoked. Like we're just stoked for the day, and then the next day comes, you know? So I think like from a mindset perspective, it's not like we have to work on, how do you stay driven? How do you stay focused? It happens because that's so driving us.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm challenged by that on two levels. One, because I'm thinking about how I wake up every day. And then two, because I'm also thinking about a lot of our clients in the sense that of what they do, and how I think maybe that's where I don't want to make an excuse for people that are not in software, but I think it's interesting that you're so user focused. Like your platform has users at the center. I'm thinking about a sign writer. Obviously, they have a user at the center of their business too.
Yeah, yeah.
But they often get caught up in, oh, we're putting the vinyl on the car and we're removing this old shitty stuff from here and doing the graphics. And it can be whatever the business is. It can be quite technically focused. And I think that, and even for myself, like when I'm with clients, I'm 100% focused on them and helping them.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily wake up and think, man, what impact could I have on the world today through the work we're doing? Some days I do, but I love that you guys are doing that as founders, or as co-founders and co-directors.
Yeah.
That you're encouraging each other in that journey and have that rhythm around it. That's so cool.
Yeah, and it is helpful to have each other, as being a solo founder previously, like that was really hard. I do think that so much of happiness, whether it's in business or in your personal life, is the purpose. Like, and it doesn't have to be a purpose of I'm going to save the world. But like even when like the sign writer example, I think like that's where some of those user interviews come in, is if you can really find out the difference that's made to that customer. Like maybe it's just a tiny thing of like someone said, "God, your car looks amazing with that." Like feeding that in, like that's the fuel that everyone needs, especially a business owner. I think it's harder with staff, but you go, well, why are you doing this? And if the only reason you're doing that business is just money, just purely financial, then find a purpose related to that then. So what does that mean? If you're going to be financially successful, what will that allow you to do? And why and why and why? And you start mapping that out, and then you find a purpose there that's tied up. So every morning that purpose is tied to your, when you wake up. Like it is possible even in
totally agree.
Tiny things. But I don't think that often we think like that because everything's a transaction.
Yeah.
And you're just getting through life and you're just trying to get to the next holiday.
Yes.
Whereas actually you go, today is the day. Like every day, today's the day to do something good and feel good, and there's no point waiting for 3 months when you're going to Fiji because it's not.
You're missing the 90 days in between. The next 90 days. Yeah.
And they might not come,
Yeah. And that, it's, I mean, it's so obvious talking about it, but I think, like you said, we can, I'll personalize that. I can, and I notice our clients often doing the same. And I think just centering on purpose is, I think we all realize when you talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, well that's obvious.
Yeah.
But then actually doing it is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But it's cool that you guys have found a way to do that. to me, it sounds like it's systematic. It's not like it's actually like embedded into your daily rhythms, your daily, weekly rhythms as people and as a business.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it's so front and center for you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think, we want to build that for others in our team. And, that then comes down to things like equity for our team members and bringing them on that journey. Like everybody's got such an important, part to play. And that's exciting to be like, how do we keep that going, and that people want to be part of what we're doing, and like I think even our customers just love being part of what we do, like they reach out to us all the time to, just to champion us, or we see it with our customers are referring people all the time. Like we probably get like 15 a week of
Wow.
emails from other customers going, I just want to introduce you to someone else. It's like they want to be in that journey, but maybe that's just because also we're building that as a value. Like they see it and they want to be part of that purpose that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Yep. And I always think about restaurants, like when you go to a restaurant and you have a 6, 7 out of 10, you're not referring that restaurant. You're not saying like, hey, go check out this restaurant that's a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
You refer the 9s or 10s.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
And so if they're obviously having a great experience,
yeah,
whether that's on a human level or a software level or both,
yeah,
they to get that number of referrals each week.
Yeah.
It's clearly
It's good. Like we're, and I think maybe it's like it's like watching a movie, isn't it? You just want people to experience the movie, and probably for us it's a little bit easier too because people can see results. So like we'll have a customer meeting with someone and then they show them Contented because they're just so excited to show them their words in it, and then they are like, wow, I want this. It's like that's quite easy to share. Like it's hard if you're in a business like that's not software, or, like to kind of have that impact quickly to share to someone else.
Sure.
So, software is a lot easier in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Speaking of the growth of the business, you mentioned that you've been going out to people and speaking at a lot of events. Like, what does that growth look like for you, and how have you achieved that growth so far?
Yeah, I mean, we really identified that the best way to get Contented out to people is for them to see it themselves, right? So not even showing them, but them actually doing it themselves. And so the growth through the conference channel has actually also been we create a Contented version for the conference. So nobody has to write notes. They can then access all the speaker sessions in the platform. The platform's branded to the conference. Like that side of things is just huge for us, because, and then especially if I get to speak at that conference too. So it's gone from that one-to-one to one-to-many. And I think that's always really hard to try and get to. And we've landed on conferences being amazing because we don't, it's a collaboration with the conference. It costs them nothing. It's a great way for people to go and experience that whole day again and share it with other people. So that's been a really important point of like one meeting with one person, getting one sale, then meeting another person, and that just being very one-to-one. And then the one-to-many is coming via conferences or via customers sharing Contented, because that requires no demo from me. So by the time they come to me, they're like, I just want it, rather than, can you show me how it works, So there's like sort of definitely that's, been a huge impact on the growth because we're such a small team. We don't have this whole team of sales reps that can go out there. So we need to think differently about getting it, out there.
Yeah, and a pretty cool tool to be able to customize something for an event and effectively white label it for them especially.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned that you've kind of shifted from that one-to-one to one-to-many model in terms of your marketing and sales. How did that come about? Was that deliberate thing, or?
It came about, I was asked to speak at a conference. One of our clients, Cambridge partners here in Christchurch, we're hosting an international group that they're part of. And we just came up, we just last minute were like, hey, it'd be really amazing if we could get these people at this conference to record, to interview each other and put it in. Like that, how great would that be? And I didn't realize the kind of caliber of people at this conference. Like it was only, there's probably 40 people. It wasn't huge. And we just decided to do that just as an experiment. It really was just like, let's just see what happens with it. And it was just the most magical thing. Like these are CEOs from, these huge wealth firms, kind of were looking a little bit like, what is this? And they were just interviewing each other, putting it in, and they just were walking around. Like they were running up to me with their laptop going, look what it made, and I was like, okay, this is a really like magical thing that normally you could not do. Like if another software product, you can't get that magic. So it was like we have to harness that feeling, what they felt like, seeing their amazing words about their firms going in here, pressing all the buttons, including like, let's create a news story and a newsletter output. They were then posting on LinkedIn these things that they created in the day. It was like, there's something really amazing with that. So that was sort of we're going to do that now. That's a good thing to do.
It's almost like a giant trial.
Yeah. Live trial.
Quick.
Yeah. And it was. Yeah. It totally.
That's really cool. Yeah. And it's interesting that it's such a leveraged way to distribute the message. Equally, though, I think sometimes it's, don't despise the small beginnings, right? Like you started with these one-on-one meetings and just talking to people about what's going on. And then that has turned into, now speaking at conferences and white labeling a product for them live. And that's a cool transition. In terms of like some of the things that you've got happening within the business, software wise and process wise, like what are some of the processes or systems that you have in the business that have made it easier to run so far?
So I guess because we're small, like we try lots of things. So when it comes to the CRMs, we're like, we're going to try HubSpot, we're going to give it a chance, and we're going to try this, we're going to try that, we're going to do Notion. So we try a lot and then we'll land on something. So like one of the ones that we've landed on recently is called Folk CRM, which is like a mixture of Notion and HubSpot. It's amazing. And so just being able to go like, having something like that, you can email huge amounts of people that are in your different buckets, and it's awesome. And so that's been a massive savior for us. But I always think about businesses that can't quickly try these things. Like we're in that position where we can just be like, what is, like we use Superhuman as our email platform, which is AI, which is like absolutely amazing. And it just, those things for Lucy and I, particularly with our brains, that can be quite sort of thinking creatively and not great at the admin.
What's amazing about it?
So Superhuman, you can firstly search anything. So you can go like, what was the quote that I sent to Marcus, 5 months ago? And then it's got everything that you've sent. You can click on, you can easily like have amazing templates and snips, and it's all designed to get to zero inbox, which I was like, that can never happen, but it happens. Like it's really great. So for those things, it's massive. And I think like from a process perspective, like, I mean, this probably doesn't really count as a process. Like for me to get deep work done, I have to listen to the same song over and over on repeat to be in like this full zone. So I'll always implement that when I'm like, I've got to do invoicing and GST or whatever. So I'm like, get into that, So I don't have like a system for it, but that's like a hack that I use.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that it's a personal system, right?
Yeah.
Like that's something that you've worked out, works for you. It drives me crazy, but
yeah.
But you're right. Like that, I think that's sometimes something that we overlook is we think it's all about business, but actually a lot of what will make us successful in a smaller company is actually your own personal processes.
Yeah.
As an owner.
Yeah.
Because you're with a smaller team, you're how you operate is going to have such a big impact. If you've got 100 employees,
Yeah.
your impact's pretty small.
Yeah, exactly.
In one sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you mentioned folk CRM. What do you find has worked well for that, and with that software specifically for you guys?
So I mean, for that, it's the ability to take like a whole sales navigator list, for example, import it into Folk, and then it enriches it so it finds all the emails of all the people. So then you can send these tailored emails to everyone, and it's like it's just that streamlined kind of lead gen. Like we had looked at some tools that could do lead gen, and it was just like so not aligned with us in terms of the human side. Like it was just like this whole flow of, it'll like a post of somebody and then it will connect after 2 days and then it will send this message to them. And it just didn't, I think it works totally for some businesses, but for us, it was just weird. And, so being able to kind of keep the human and it's still sort of manual, but on a larger scale, like it's great. Like it's made such a difference to us, and even for like product, like it's like all the people, like we're launching an app soon for recording and all the people that were testing the app, there's a whole heap of people. And it means that Lucy can communicate with them quickly using, just things that take so long if you use traditional.
Another tool. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about how HR or people and culture is in your business. How do you structure that side of the things?
Yeah, I mean, us being just small, we just like, Lucy and I just share that really. And I think there's a lot of things that I realized are so different from me having worked in HR to me being a business owner. I'm like, the advice that I used to give, sometimes I look back on and go, that just, I don't know, it comes from a different place.
What stands out most in that?
I think it's the thing that I used to probably like the risk side. Like I would always be so much more risk adverse, obviously working in HR. Now it's like, it's thinking about just practically like what we need. We don't need to be mucking around with this. We don't have to do, like when we were hiring our software intern, who's amazing, we did a whole process of, advertising and wanting to follow this really strict way of working. And then it was like, we just knew Charlie was the person that we wanted to hire. And we're like, we don't have to do this really regimented thing. Like, I think I've probably become far less, regimented from that perspective.
Okay. So when you're in HR, you're very much, let's follow this
best practice
step by step. Yeah. And then when you're an owner, it's like,
you can't. Well, I just don't think you can. I think when we scale and we're a larger team, then yes, we would have somebody that would do that. But I think right now, all the decisions are just based on, is this good for product? Is this going to help revenue? And has to be quick. Like everything has to be made, every decision just is made quickly, unless it's like a really sort of, intense legal situation. But, whereas I think sometimes if we hired a people and culture person now, I would imagine it would slow things down because
they would
be trying to, also justify their existence as well, like to go, I'm making an impact, so I'm going to put in all these processes. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting, how you kind of have to hold two things at the same time, because on the one hand, like you're saying with interviewing people and users, it's like that slows things down on the one hand, but it speeds it up on the other.
Yeah.
In the sense of a better product market fit is going to help you grow long term.
Yeah.
But it's not always the case. Sometimes there's a point where you get diminishing returns and it's like, this is actually just slowing us down.
Yeah.
And I often find that myself with the business. It's like, I want to do both at the same time. I want to slow the hell down.
Yeah.
And speed the hell up and like run at warp speed.
Yeah.
And those two things it's difficult to balance that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Especially with hiring, I think, what I probably see the dangerous side of what you're describing in terms of people that hire based on gut. And I'm not saying there's not we've definitely had people that hire because a unicorn pops up and it's like, this is the perfect person and it works exactly as expected. Equally, I've had people that do not follow a great process consistently, and it turns into consistent bad hires, which is an absolute shit show for profitability and productivity. So yeah, I think both is true, but I think the key thing that you're saying is that what's shifted for you is that pace. Like there's a different pace now.
Yeah, you can't afford. I mean, I worked at the DHB previously. Like you could afford there to take a long time.
Yes.
But it is just so different. And I also think like one thing we've really realized is we've started hiring fractional people, which is like, high level C-suite people who you might get for a day, a month even, but they do deep work and they're not consulting, they're just doing, and seeing that value too of getting these amazing people for just bits of it, and that not everything has to be like you've got to hire a full-time CTO or something. You can actually hire this person for a tiny bit and then.
Who do you have in your fractional team?
So we have somebody in kind of a revenue ops kind of level who's worked, and who'd been in a business that was acquired. So like really useful. And then product as well, like senior, like worked in incredible organizations, and like for Lucy being able to just get so much out of it in just this small amount of time, and someone else in sort of that product kind of market fit side. And it means that you can then have them, they're not engaged for this long period of time either. Like it's so risk free. But it's the attitude of being able to come in and just do work. Like, don't want a workshop, like in that situation. Like, there's times that you do need a workshop, but like, for a fractional, it's like they're not doing that. They're just, right, I've reviewed this and this is what you need to do and this is who you're going to need to do it and I can do this little bit, and that's super exciting.
Cuts a lot of noise out.
And you can do that with people and culture. Like we know a lot of startups that are getting fractional, like, and they've been chief people officers. That's great. Like that's a good, way to balance out that need for speed. And
yeah, it is. It's something that I don't see a lot of it in kind of established businesses thinking or consideration. And yeah, it is definitely becoming more common, broadly speaking, but it's not something I think is accessed typically in the SME space.
Yeah.
How did you guys come about that? Like, how did you arrive at that decision of like, not just we could use a CMO, a fractional C-suite executive, but we are going to do that?
Yeah.
Like, how did that come about?
I mean, I think probably in startup land, it's quite visual. Like you see a lot of what's happening, so you can go, wow, like that's amazing. How did you get that done? Oh, we've been using this fractional person, and then we met a woman who she's got the fractional directory. So that was like the first time you're like, wow, there's an actual directory of these amazing people, and they either have a day rate or whatever it is, and that just really worked for us to be able to just start investigating that and going like, who are you and what have you done, and being able to filter it to like what kind of companies they'd worked at, like who's some of the companies we would aspire to be like, and then getting someone, like who's a CMO of Xero or something, like that's amazing. And I think SMEs are like, they're not at that point yet where that's even really known. Like anytime I mention to our clients like about fractional people, they're like, what is that? But I don't think it's very far off from being the norm, because what a great, like, it's great. I just can't see a downside really to that.
No, I think the assumption is in SME land, I like that phrase, like startup land, in SME land and I mean that in terms of established businesses, would be there's that fear around, generally speaking, around hiring people. Like, oh, I can't afford a X. We're not big enough for a Y.
Yeah.
And like you said, it often it's just because it's not even in the consideration list.
Yeah.
And if you put a directory in front of them with a bunch of talented people that could be available to them part-time, even if it's at a higher rate than what market rate for a full-time employee might be, that would be eye-opening.
Yeah.
As you said, through your conversations. That's really cool. I want to finish with a really hard question. I'm not sure if you've heard it on previous podcasts, but I like asking it because it gets to the core of who we are and what we're about, which is, in 12 months' time, if you were sitting here reflecting on just the most amazing year in business, who would you have become and what would you have done?
What would I have become? I feel like, firstly, if I think of like a personal perspective, I think I would love it to be like I've nailed my daughter becoming a teenager, like, that transition.
Yes.
Like that would be a real good feeling to be able to go, I've built a business and been really busy, but I haven't dropped the ball there. Like that would be a good, same with, relationships, marriage, like great, nothing's fallen over, managed to keep everything going. But from a business perspective, I think like I would love to feel that feeling of just that we have scaled and that we have grown our team and we've kept the same values. Like that's big. Like I think obviously I've talked a lot about that, but that it's not like I'm not like Lucy and I are still getting on amazingly well, even though we've grown hugely. We're traveling a lot, but it's okay because we've got lots of support and, like all those sorts of things. Like we've grown our team by 10 people and yeah, we've nailed it. Like I want us to feel the same that we feel now. Like I think that's actually quite important. Like I don't actually want to grow. I want the business to grow, but I don't actually want to change in 12 months.
The essence of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's a great place to finish and excited. It will be really cool to see in 12 months, look back on this and see, where you are and just how the company's grown because it's exciting times in that space. So watch this case study, hopefully.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
It's a wrap.